chapter 5, Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness, text number, it says here 8 to 9. Does that mean there was no class yesterday? Is that right? What's that? 10. Should be 10 today. 8 and 9. Who gave class yesterday?
No.
Oh. Who gave class the day before that? I did. Did I give it on 8 and 9? I think,
Yes.
We went over the whole controversy. All right. Text 10. Brahmanyadaya karmani sangam tyaktva karotiya lipitena sapapena padma patram ivambasa brahmanyadaya karmani sangam tyaktva karotiya lipitena sapapena padma patram ivambasa brahmanyadaya karmani sangam tyaktva karotiya lipitena sapapena padma patram ivambasa Brahmani, unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Adaya, resigning. Karmani, all works. Sangam, attachment. Tyaktva, giving up. Karoti, performs. Ya, who. Lipyate, is affected. Na, never. Sa, he. Papena, by sin. Padma patram, a lotus leaf. Eva, like. Ambasa, by the water. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. One who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results unto the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful action as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. Please repeat. One who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results unto the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful action, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. Purport. Here, Brahmani means in Krishna consciousness. The material world is a sum total manifestation of the three modes of material nature, technically called pradhana. The Vedic hymns Sarvam Yetad Brahma, Mundakya Upanishad, 2. Tasmad Etad Brahma Nama Rupa Anam Chajayate, Mundukya Upanishad, first one. This is the Mundakya Upanishad, 1, 2, 10. And in the Bhagavad Gita, 14.3, Mamayo Nirmahad Brahma, indicate that everything in the material world is a manifestation of Brahman. And although the effects are differently manifested, they are non-different from the cause. In the Isha Upanishad it is said that everything is related to the Supreme Brahman or Krishna, and thus everything belongs to him only. One who knows perfectly well that everything belongs to Krishna, that he is the proprietor of everything, and that therefore everything is engaged in the service of the Lord, naturally has nothing to do with the results of his activities, whether virtuous or sinful. even one's material body being a gift of the Lord, for carrying out a particular type of action, can be engaged in Krishna consciousness. It is then beyond contamination by sinful reactions, exactly as the lotus leaf, though remaining in the water, is not wet. The Lord also says in the Gita 3:30, Mayi sarvani karmani sanyasyasya. Resigning all works unto me, the conclusion is that a person without Krishna consciousness acts according to the concept of the material body and senses, but a person in Krishna consciousness acts according to the knowledge that the body is the property of Krishna and should therefore be engaged in the service of Krishna. Brahmanyadaya karmani sangam tyakta karotiya lipitena sapapena padma patrami vambasa. One who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the result unto the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful action as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswatam Deve Gauravani Vacharane Nirvishesha Shrinivari Paskatya De Sadarna. Here in this verse, different types of ingredients and activities are mentioned. One of them is we're supposed to do our duty. Everyone has their duty. We may not know what our duty is, but this body was created by the material nature, and it's created out of the three modes. And Krishna has explained to us, Chatura Vanyamaya Shistam Guna Karma Vibhagashaha Tasya Kartaram Apimam Vidya Kartaram Avya. According to the three modes of material nature and the work ascribed to them, the corresponding four divisions of human society were created by me, and although I am the creator of the system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. In other words, Krishna's consciousness doesn't change, even when he's in the material world, but he's created the three modes of material nature, they're his energies, and he's manifested different bodies from those three modes, and a soul who gets awarded a particular body by the material nature, along with that body, there's a certain duty to do. We may think that our only duty is to serve the senses, but that's not exactly what duty means. That's animal life. That's simply sense gratification. Krishna says, Evam pravartitam chakram nanuvarti iti haya agayu indriyaramo mokam partha sijivati. That a person who doesn't follow this system of sacrifice certainly leads a life of sin. For a person living for the delight of the senses only lives in vain. In other words, we may think that we don't have any duty. One may not know what one's duty is, or think that there is no duty. Of course, in modern society, there is some vague idea of God consciousness still existing. Some idea, for instance, that of marriage. You're supposed to marry one woman, and you're not supposed to search after a variety of girlfriends when you're married, or a variety of boyfriends. You're supposed to pay your taxes. You're not supposed to cheat or lie or steal. So there's some vague thing like that people have some sentiment like that. And to some extent, once in a while, they do something like that. That they don't run around the street naked during the summer, although in some countries they do. Because they have some idea that this is not proper. There's something not quite right with it. Although there's propaganda that these supposed feelings are all a result of inhibitions which are dangerous psychologically, whatever. In other words, there's some propaganda to give up, abandon all feelings of restraint, all ideas of higher authority, and simply surrender to the mind and the senses and do whatever they dictate. So if you feel like running naked in the street, then people should be allowed to do that. There should be a law that anyone who wants to run naked in the street should happily do so. Because people are becoming more and more unaware of the fact that although one may happily run naked in the street, but in their next lifetime one will have to become a tree, or maybe a dog. Dogs also run happily naked in the street, no one protests, but after all they're a dog. And a dog, the disadvantage of being a dog is not that the dog doesn't enjoy sense gratification, because the dog can eat, it can sleep, it has sex, and it defends itself, and there is no inhibition. He doesn't feel guilty if he eats. He doesn't feel guilty if he sleeps. No one comes up to the dog and tells the dog, "You're oversleeping." Then the dog feels very guilty and says, "Well, my alarm clock went off and I kind of overslept, I'm sorry." No, he doesn't really care. He doesn't even think about those things. But human life is meant to understand that there is a duty, that along with the body there's some obligation, according to the three modes of nature. Ultimately, Krishna says, "Anad bhavati bhutani, parjana anajagna, jagna bhavati parjanyo, jagna karma samudbhava." That the first duty we have is to sacrifice our energies and offer at least our food to God. Jagna shishtashna shanto, mujante sarvakil vishai, mujante te dvagam papa, ye pachanyat makarna. That the devotees of the Lord, they're released from all kinds of sin because they eat food offered first for sacrifice. So what is the sin? Sin is not the devil with, two horns and a tail, making contracts with people. If you do that, then you're sinful. Otherwise, than that, whatever you do is all right. So you don't make a contract with the devil and sign it. No, sin means as soon as we have this independent desire to enjoy the material world, it's sinful because we have to serve lust instead of Krishna. And Krishna says lust is never satisfied and it burns like fire. So the result of serving lust is it burns more. We're already under the influence of the sway of lust if we're not transcendently situated. Therefore it can increase, it can decrease. It increases and we come into the modes of ignorance and passion, deeper and deeper from passion to more and more ignorance. And if it decreases, we go into the modes of goodness, and finally we transcend these things. In any case, lust is different degrees, simply different degrees in conditioned life, sometimes more, sometimes less. But in any case, it's not satisfied and burns like fire. It's always ready to demand that we serve its dictations. But serving lust and the dictations of lust by itself will simply degrade one. Therefore, there is a duty everyone has, that, first of all, the human beings are supposed to, what they eat, offer to Krishna. And it should be food which is offerable. Because our first lust, the first service of lust is generally gratifying the tongue. Everyone is eating all the time. Some people eat less, some people eat more. But if we don't eat food offered to sacrifice to Krishna, then simply our material desires will increase, because this is the way we first of all lord it over the material nature, is through eating. As I've said before, no one may like us, no one may listen to us, but that food surrendered before us, the carrot, peas, the carrot, or the cabbage, everything is just waiting for us to devour it, enjoy it, and let it enter into us and empower us so we can lord over more carrots and chickpeas and things in the future. So this sense of lordship in the material world, of enjoyment, first of all, manifests itself through the tongue, through eating. And then with the other sense, if the tongue becomes if we're empowered by the energy of what we're eating, then we can perform our other activities, like sleeping, mating, defending, etc. But without eating, all the other senses become very weak. We can't do anything. We become disempowered. So, this lordship is eating, but if one eats food offered to sacrifice to Krishna, then the result is, if one is in that consciousness that this is offered to Krishna, then that I'm not the Lord, that I'm not the enjoyer, that this energy is being eaten by me so I can perform service to Krishna with this body, to empower the body for service, then it becomes a sacrifice to Krishna, the eating. And in that mentality, our other activities can also be done as a sacrifice. If we're trying to perform sacrifices to Krishna on less important planes, but we can't give up our desire to lord over the food, then it's very hard to develop an attitude of sacrifice on another plane if we can't do it on the more essential plane. In other words, we're not eating prasadam, we're eating other things which are not offered to Krishna, especially non-vegetarian things, then the intensity of our desire, our lust to enjoy the material nature increases greatly, and then it's very hard to understand anything about devotion or the existence of God. Everything becomes very difficult to understand. The only thing we can understand and actually pay attention to is the ever more demands of our senses to enjoy themselves in different varieties in the material world. And so the soul becomes more and more bewildered, more and more confused. As it tries to enjoy, it suffers more and more. As it tries to understand its situation, all it gets is confusion and bewilderment. Therefore, one should know one's duty, beginning with offering one's food to Krishna. And then there are other duties. In other words, the four varnas, the four ashrams, they have a certain way of duties that we're supposed to perform. But the main duty is to perform sacrifice so that rain comes, and then there's grains, and then all of them participate in eating. It's not that the Kshatriyas perform the sacrifices and only they eat. Oh, also the Vaishyas eat, and the Shudras eat, and the Brahmins eat. They all eat, maybe different amounts, maybe different type of style, but they all know they will have to cooperate together in order to produce the food, and then they can eat. And with that energy, they can go on with their service to Krishna. But they're supposed to do it without attachment. Not that we're working together, cooperating, doing our duty. The food's coming, so now let me eat twice as much as I would have, because there's plenty around, so let me eat it all. No, one has to be unattached, knowing, as Prabhupada says here, that it all belongs to Krishna, and it's not for the soul's advantage to try to get more than it needs. It has to be unattached. It should understand that by doing its duty, utilizing its energies that Krishna has given it in Krishna's service, then the result is it can become purified. But if it remains attached to the results of its work, then the result is it doesn't go anywhere. It simply gets entangled in the modes of nature, and therefore after some time it'll stop doing its duty. And surrendering the results into the Supreme Lord. So these three things, that without attachment to material consciousness, without attachment to material activities, without doing its duty, and offering ultimately everything to Krishna, then it becomes unaffected by sinful action. In other words, even though there may be some material desires present, but the soul, if it's determined enough to remain aloof from the material allurements, and at the same time performs its duties to please Krishna, then there is no question of becoming affected by material consciousness. And instead, one becomes affected by Krishna consciousness. One becomes more and more conscious of Krishna, and in the presence of Krishna, one begins to feel transcendental happiness, transcendental enlightenment, and the previous activities, known as karma, which are stored in the heart, prarabdha karma, aprarabdha karma, kutam, bijam, etc., they're burnt away by the ecstasy that the soul feels in its association with Krishna and Krishna's associates and pastimes, transcendental feelings of emotions of transcendental love and ecstasy, and therefore the soul becomes progressively more enlightened and enlightened. And gradually its attachment for sinful activities, sinful desires diminishes, and it becomes more attached to Krishna consciousness. Therefore, as it explains here, that the only problem the soul has is that it's thinking that there is something better to do than to serve Krishna, that it's better to try to become an independent lord, independent master of the material nature, and that way enjoying this material world in different varieties of ways. But actually the soul is never an independent anything. It simply becomes a slave of the dictations of material desires and wanders through different species of life, endlessly trying to satisfy the dictation of desire, anger, and all varieties of material dictations, and simply winds up temporarily experiencing satisfaction from the alleviation of the material desires and rapidly becoming overwhelmed by them again and suffering. Therefore, if one takes the Krishna consciousness and tries to utilize, simply agrees to accept the duty that one has for those who are not pure devotees or trying for pure devotional service, then that duty is dictated by the Vana and Ashram system. But of course people don't know about that. They don't believe that the rain comes from sacrifice. They think it's somehow or another it's just coming, because after all, we're practically all godless anyhow, but still the rain's coming. So they don't really care. They don't think about those things. They think that the weatherman has more to do with the weather than God does. Therefore, they have no concern what their varna is, what to speak of ashram. They just go on killing animals, killing each other, performing all kinds of sinful activities, and they expect everything will go very nicely because of their economic development. That all they do is have to build factories, and if everything goes wrong, they'll have plenty of nuts and bolts to pass out for everyone to eat. But that's not the way, at least it explains it in Bhagavad Gita, that after people's pious results run out, then they will have to eat nuts and bolts. Or they'll be eating other things which are practically on the same level as nuts and bolts. People don't understand that because they're in ignorance. They don't think that there's such a thing as duty. They don't believe that the Shudras are supposed to cooperate. They think the Shudras are supposed to rebel. And they think the Vaishyas, they're supposed to exploit people. They're supposed to, with their intelligence, how to manipulate, simply cheat as much as possible. And the Kshatriyas are supposed to get paid off by the Vaishyas, so they don't regulate the Vaishyas. Just allow them to cheat, because that's what they are. They're also cheaters. And if there's some problem, the Kshatriyas, they simply push a button and kill enough people that the problem goes away. And the Brahmins are simply supposed to espouse the glories of sense gratification, how we are the body, there is no God. They're supposed to preach atheism, directly or indirectly, so that economic development doesn't get interfered with. People, the GMP can go up every year, and everything will be nice. Although things aren't so nice, and everything is rapidly deteriorating, but newspapers say it's good. Don't worry about it. The more rapidly it deteriorates, the better things are. But this is not what the Bhagavatam says. So Bhagavad Gita says that everyone has their duty, but because people can't understand their duties in this age, what they're supposed to do, therefore their only duty to begin with is simply to chant Hare Krishna. Because if they chant Hare Krishna as their duty, then gradually they make a little bit of progress and wake up that there is such a thing as spiritual life. They'll get enough understanding, at least some people will get enough understanding to realize that they're not their body. That the goal of life is not just to serve the senses endlessly. That there must be something else for the soul, some higher purpose of life, rather than just gratifying the senses incessantly. Every morning wake up, struggle to wake up, and just pray that there's something to eat. And if it's not a fast day and there's something to eat, think, well, man, this is a good day. Everything's going all right. And if you can, increase it a little bit with mating and, watch a video about defending and imagine that you're a great hero defending everything, then that's even sweeter. It's even a sweeter day. And every morning you go through the same thing, just praying that there's something to eat, place to sleep. And if that happens, then at least the basic principles of life have been served. But there's no end to it. People have been around here since time immemorial, getting up every morning because they slept. In every species of life, they get up. Sometimes some of them work at night, like the owls and other species. People work in the factories. Sometimes they work at night. But it's been going on. People have been getting up every day and then eating, mating and defending. That's all that's going on. And if that's the ultimate purpose of existence, eternally stay in the material world, eat, sleep, mate, and defend, then if that's what people think is the highest position of life, then good luck. And if there's something more than that, that begins with spiritual life, that we're not this body, that we're spiritual beings, and that we have some higher purpose. So Varnashram Dharma begins to show us that we're supposed to cooperate under the instructions of higher powers, that there are higher powers, that we're not the supreme here, that we should serve the instructions of the higher powers. But because people can't even understand that in this age, what was the most elementary thing, even the demons understood that previously. Hiranyakashipu didn't open up a weapons factory. Then armed all his demons and stormed the demigods. No, he prayed to the higher powers. Even the demons understood that there were higher powers they had to pray to. But nowadays people think the highest power is the bank. You go to the bank and you pray, please give me a loan. And then if you get the loan, then you can, then you're free to do whatever you like. As long as you can pay the loan back, you're a good person. So people don't understand that, but the Varnashram system, people could understand it. They performed the necessary sacrifices, the rain came, and the food was there. And then, above that, they could understand they had the brains, the peace of mind, the lack of complications. They could read the books and hear that they're not their body and understand it. It wasn't a big thing that you had to go to college for 30 years and study, get your PhD, and then you understood that your body's changing. They reached the conclusion after 500 scientific experiments, they all agree, yes, the body is changing. Just like when I went to college, they gave an $80,000 grant to one professor. He was researching why spiders build webs. You know about that? Yeah, right. And then after his research, he discovered the reason why they build webs is to catch flies. So after 500 years of research, they'll figure out that the body's changing. And then, after 500 more years of research, they'll find out that the person who's in the body, who's aware of it, is not changing. He's the same person, who's continuously aware of different bodies. And that's called scientific research at its best. Other than that, people have made everything so complicated that they can't understand that. Big professors, Prabhupada says, too complicated for them to understand. But once you try to make things less complicated, once you try to use one's intelligence so that one can perceive how we're not independent, how things are not going on independently, that the sun floating in the sky is not some accident, a ball of fire millions of times bigger than the earth doesn't happen to float up every day right at the right time and float down at the right time and always be in the right position, because that's the way things are. It's a great accident. That such a ball of fire floating in the air, just the fact that how many people can float balls of fire in the air that size and just keep them in an orbit perpetually, day after day after day after day, and say it's all by accident. So these scientists, these so-called philosophers and scholars, they're simply fools. They're nothing more than fools. And simply because everyone else is a fool, because it's the land of fools, therefore they all nod their heads and agree, oh, it's very intelligent. But the fact is that none of this is very intelligent. Our being in the material world is not very intelligent. And our not accepting the most obvious things is also not very intelligent. And the more we deny the most obvious things, the fact that there are controllers in this world, the fact that we're under control, there are laws of nature we're supposed to follow, and if we don't follow them, then we get into trouble. So as we accept those things, then we realize that, yes, I would like to eat, because I can't do anything unless I eat, and eating depends upon certain activities like sacrifice, and although we don't like to accept authority, but because it says in the book, and because that's the way things actually work, we should accept the books and follow them, and then the rains will come, the food will be there, and that's not the end of it, but we're supposed to get liberation, that we're actually a soul. Our whole problem is not solved just by getting something to eat. We're spiritual souls, we're entangled, so we should try and get out of the material world. And simply getting out of the material world will not solve our problem either, because where do you go? You have to go someplace where you're going to be able to do something which will actually be satisfying. Not that we just, there's a fire in the house, so you run out of the house. And when you run out of the house, you're going to do something. You're just not going to sit there forever thinking, well, at least I'm not in the fire. You're going to want to do something after you get out of the house. Maybe build another house or do something which is not on fire. So the next thing is to find out what we're actually supposed to be doing. We're not supposed to be in the house that's on fire, but we're not supposed to simply sit outside the house thinking, at least I'm not on fire. We want to do something which is progressive, positive. So then that's the next stage. But if people can't even understand the first stage, that not supposed to be in the house that's on fire, then it's very hard for them to understand that there's something beyond that. If they're thinking, well, it's nice and warm in here, and there's something on the stove, and this way, because the house is on fire, we don't have to pay for the gas to cook our food. It'll all get cooked along with us. So it's not so bad the house is on fire. But think about how warm it is in the house. write poetry about it. Therefore, by studying these scriptures, by understanding things with one's intelligence, and then by the mercy of Krishna, then we can gradually come to a sane position and appreciate how this body, along with it, does have a duty, and being attached to our misconceptions of how we're going to enjoy the results of what we're doing is not very beneficial for us. Instead, we should offer everything to Krishna, and this way we'll be able to become Krishna conscious. When we become Krishna conscious, then we'll actually be happy and satisfied. We'll realize who we really are and what we're really supposed to be doing. Not just utilizing this body, or even the mind. What we're supposed to, by nature, we want to use our own self in the service of Krishna. Just as Krishna, he wants to utilize his self in the service of all living entities. So the living entities, because Krishna is unlimitedly attractive, they become attracted to him, just like iron becomes attracted to a magnet. You don't have to preach to iron fillings, become attracted to the magnet. It's just automatic. Because Krishna is so amazingly beautiful and wonderful and blissful, everyone naturally becomes unlimitedly attracted to him. But only due to the rustiness of the soul that he doesn't become attracted. So we just give up our attachment to the rust, then naturally we become attracted to Krishna. And no one in the spiritual world is overwhelmed with transcendent love and pleasure in association with Krishna is complaining. Oh, there's too much pleasure here. Let's go to some place where there's not so much happiness. We're getting bored with this ever-increasing happiness all the time. Let's go and suffer. Yeah, I heard there's a good place to suffer, It's called, let's go visit Belgium. Plenty of places to suffer there. Yeah, it's Kali Yuga too, yeah. There's all new varieties of suffering they're coming up with. No one's really overly attracted once we find out where the real source of happiness is. Then naturally we won't become attracted to the other things, the other ideas that are being propagated very intently to convince people that the source of their suffering can actually be the source of their happiness. So I'll stop here. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
I would like to ask if you do something to do with responsibility.
What was that?
If duty has something to do with responsibility.
Yes. It's your real responsibility. People think that their responsibility is to serve their senses. So in the name of that responsibility, they work very hard. But that's not their real duty. Their real duty is to at least serve the senses of the universal form, work according to the laws of nature, which Manu has given to us. So there's a duty for the Kshatriyas, there's a duty for the Brahmins, there's a duty to the Vaishyas, for the Shudras. Different duties according to the different desires for sense gratification. The more one becomes advanced, then the more duties there are to follow. Just like the Brahmins, there are many duties for the Brahmins. For the Kshatriyas, there is also many duties. For the Vaishyas, less, but still a lot. For the Shudras, hardly any duties. You're just supposed to follow the higher orders. Still there's some duties, some respect for them. But nowadays, one is a Shudra, which means good musician, dealing a lot with the material energy. But all they want is they get so much money and they get all the fame and respect, and that's all they want. They have no intelligence what to do with their energies. They just endlessly, mindlessly gratify their senses, but they want to be famous and respected. But that's not the duty of a Shudra. The duty of a Shudra is to not desire that fame and respect. They can gratify their senses, but to a certain degree, and that's supposed to be unlimited facility for them. Just enough to keep them satisfied, and not too much to harm them or harm others. But nowadays the Shudras, they think they have a responsibility. Any crazy thing that they want to do, they think is their responsibility. But that's not necessarily their responsibility. Yes.
Last time Prabhu was here, we had together in the temple and he came to me and said to me, "You are very famous." And I was thinking, maybe he knows me. And he said to me, in this temple room there is a painting of you, and he brought me before that painting. It's a painting of Prahladananda, and that was living in India, material origin. But I was thinking like this verse, it says, performance duty without attachment and stopping all sinful reactions. But to me that seems not enough to get out of the house of literally fire, to get out of the house. It seems Krishna is helping to get out of this material nature. So I don't know if your Holiness can say something on that, yeah.
Well, Krishna is offering his hand, but if we refuse to take it, it's very hard. We're thinking, Maya is also offering her hand. It's like that picture of the stairs. Maya has her attractions, and then Krishna has his attraction with his flute. So living entity can go after Maya, he can go after Krishna. Maya is offering her hand also, helping the living entity. She said, "Don't listen to that guy with the flute." He's tricked a lot of people in the past, but by cleansing planets and Chintamani stones, yet right. Don't miss your opportunity. So Maya's there also. Krishna's offering his hand and Maya's offering her. So she's helping us remain in an illusion or get deeper into it, and Krishna's offering it to get us out of it. But if we're attached to Maya, we're attached to her hand, we won't let her go. She's dragging us. And we just say, "Krishna, help," but we won't let go of Maya. It's very hard to get out. So that's the attachment.
But it's a problem to also love Krishna also with Maya.
What's that?
It's a problem to also hold on to Krishna also with Maya.
Yes, great problem.
If somebody has
Just stay in the Hare Krishna movement for a while and you'll realize what a great problem it is. Because you can't get anywhere. You hold on to Maya, you hold on to Krishna, you get frustrated after some time. You want to be blissful, but you wind up suffering all the time. It's like a person has $1 million, but he doesn't know where it is. He knows he has $1 million, but he can't figure out where it is. So a person who's in devotional service, but attached to Maya, he knows he's supposed to be rich, but he's always poor. He's always feeling himself very poor. So he hears about how blissful spiritual life is, how devotional service is supposed to be very blissful, but he's suffering all the time. Yes.
I want to ask about iskcon. We desire to always fulfill our sinful desires. So when he goes up, at what level he goes in?
What's that? What level does what go out?
At what
Attachment to fulfilling sinful desires?
Yeah, when he goes out from the heart.
gradually. There's an art and vritti, there's bhajana kriya. At the beginning there's a little liking. I had a little faith that this process works. Or, at least a little liking for prasadam. Lets me associate with the devotees, find out, it tasted good, find out where they have some more. So that's called shraddha. So there's different degrees as soon as we like something about devotional service, then we find out from the devotees who have some experience how we can get a little bit more. And they tell us. That's called sadhu sangha. And then eventually we come to the point of taking up bhajana kriya, regulated sadhana, by which the mind can be fixed on Krishna. Then we learn that that's a process, associating with Krishna, in Krishna consciousness, takes away all our suffering, gives us all auspicious qualities, gives us very great happiness, etc. And then we become interested in performing the sadhana. But at the same time we're attached to material desires. Next stage is anartha and vritti. We find out what those material desires are, and hearing and trying to practice, gradually give them up a little at a time. So that comes at the stage of anartha and vritti. It's a part of the practice of bhajana kriya. We hear about how how suffering in the material world. We learn that there's a process of regulating the senses, following different principles of regulation, and at the same time trying to fix the mind upon Krishna, and that will gradually purify us of our tendencies towards gratifying the senses and attach us to the process of meditating and fixing the consciousness and the mind and the activities in devotional service and fixing the consciousness upon Krishna. So as our attachment to Krishna goes down, then our attachment for sense gratification, as our attachment to Krishna goes up, and our attachment to sense gratification goes down. Then we don't mind up giving something up, because we find out that we get a lot more in return by becoming, it gives us access to more and more deep and more consistent Krishna consciousness. So then when Maya comes along and says, try it once more, and we think, well, forget it. I've got something a lot nicer than you. So then we give up that part of Maya. But then Maya knows us because we have such deep attachment. He said, all right, you don't like me in that dress. Well, here, try this dress. What do you think about me in this dress? Well, hey, wow, that's a pretty good dress you got on. Then we forget, because Maya knows us quite well. She said, all right, you don't like me in this form, well, I'll change you to another form. What about that form? Right? That's the one I was looking for. Then we forget. And then we try to enjoy Maya in that way, and then we realize it didn't work. And again, we go through the process of regulated sadhana bhakti, then we realize, well, let me concentrate more upon Krishna, get rid of Maya in that way. We advance a little bit more, and then Maya says, all right, you're out of my clutches a little bit, I'll offer you bigger, something better. What about a planet? Ever think of having a planet? What about 2 planets? What about 4 heads? A universe. I think, wow, I haven't had a universe in a long time. I wonder what that would be like. Yeah, you can chant Hare Krishna in that universe too. Just don't get out of here, that's all. Don't get out of my clutches. If you don't like 4 heads, I'll give you 8.